I'll read Little Western. The bandit stops at the edge of a map and says nothing as we see the stagecoach pass into old emotional patterns again. Here we go, a wide shot. Every sound is too loud. Obituary, Winnebago, discharge, 'cause I'm 12 years old and can't talk about sex and there's nothing I can say. A religion, old or new, that stressed the magnificence of the universe as revealed by an Alfa Romeo rolling into the frame and stopped, loops and a booming. Tumbleweed clings to an emotional motel. A hill near the edge of feminine features, gouged not by wind or snowmelt but paroxysms, breathless hymen. As the old American West passed into history, new management full of old ideas came in to oversee the department's function, the common task of a great people merely training another beginner. We see for a moment France at war, fade out, fade in to an old white school bus ducking and swooping on the edge of the plain. Red lipstick smeared across the horizon bleeds into Americans long ago for a few minutes in order to make words out of their blood. We have a long history of shooting in our family and ravines. I was conceived in a gun nest in front of the giant Mao statue from earlier in the day. At the very least, the shooter said, if we have faith and strength, we will see our houses and our dear ones again. This is nothing more than a Revlon commercial with people illuminated by headlights halfway over the bridge. I'll read a shorter one. Landscape with porn stars. It's not easy to get to leisure without multinational backing into each other, which is always first an accident and then 30-something womanhood, according to a recent study guide. I saw you in the food court, microelectronically controlled. You had a sort of pretty mega church I wanted to help you out of. Was I imagining things? A tree line of classifieds, cans across Indiana, and there in Arizona, a sexual affair with Sasquatch blooms on blighted terrain. Researchers have tried to do this before, not being able to do so and consequently not being able to suck it up was difficult. Giving up space after marriage was difficult. Making up for the lost ghost and then trying to be a country, also difficult. The sun is brutal. We never see it. The sun is brutal. Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A.
I love that end. I have a couple of poems in my book, my sonnet books, that are about in college working as a file clerk in I used to call him Dr. Glassman, the dentist of the stars, because literally every star in Hollywood would go to this dentist, and I got to sort of see them, so it's interesting. So this one is about Brad Pitt, who was a patient, and it's called I'm Miss World, Somebody Kill Me. Brad Pitt does not want to be Brad Pitt any more than anyone else wants to wait for the dentist, birthplace of primal fear. So get a Coke or something. Why so attached to your megalomania? I'd cut my hair like Gwyneth Paltrow in Great Expectations, shaped it around a frying pan. When he comes up to the reception and says, somebody is following me. 1. Pip works in the forge unhappily. 2. A lawyer named Yeagers appears with strange news. 3. Pip must come to London immediately to get an education. Oh, large fortune dwindling down like your wife's wedding dress in the tornado drain below the earth's surface when the bride dances at noon, that empress of all things. Someone is always following you.
So great. I love that we keep on, like throughout the sonnets, we keep on kind of revisiting the reception room in the dentist's office.
It was a weird nostalgia I think when I wrote this, I don't know why I thought about this time in my life. I guess I'll read the poem right after it. This is about the only camp experience I ever had, which was a water ski camp at Yosemite. And and I did not learn how to water ski. Okay, Camp Vagina Lakes. Every day is like the last day of us, the crises more tenacious than the pathetic 8th grader assigned Beowulf. She is a good student, but lame. When a boy kisses her at water ski camp after she almost kills a fellow camper with the pointed tip of her water ski, she'll blush, and when he doesn't look at her the next day, her heart will explode. Flash goes the water ski accident right into the other girl's Hello Kitty chest. The best friend will teach her how to put a tampon in. Everyone will eat marshmallows and sing through their braces, and their awkward song will be swallowed by the Sierras, full of Grendels closing in. So I think that's
so great.
That's kind of what I have. I'm gonna.
After hearing you read that, I feel like I should have read maybe Malibu, maybe Beowulf. And
I love that. When that came in the mail, the Ducey chapbook, it's just awesome. I see some similarities actually in our poems, but I guess let me ask you a couple of questions.
Sure.
I guess, well, my first question for you when I was reading through this was this is such a wonderful book. I loved it. What is your relationship to Flark? Do you have some kind of, like, I guess, yeah, that's my question is in terms of what your influences are, and when you were writing the book, sort of aesthetically what you wanted, and because I saw some connections, between your work and Flark, but I wasn't sure it's exactly what I would consider Flark at all. So, I thought that maybe we would just start from there.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think so when I moved to Minneapolis. When I moved to Minneapolis, from the Middle East. I was living in Doha, and I was really struggling with finding an aesthetic community that I felt resonance with. It felt kind of lonely here, and I don't even remember the first Flarf poem I came across. If I had read something online, it might have even been Casey's Mars poem in the Best American Poetry or something. But once I started reading about it, and I felt a lot of kinship with it because, sorry, there's a big truck passing right now. Because I don't know, like a lot of the stuff I was doing had a little bit of that feel, but I necessarily wasn't using the Googling process to make the poems. But anyway, like, so in my isolation here, I read that, I wrote to Sharon Mesmer, whose work I really loved. I'd seen some videos of her reading at a Fly Festival and asked if she'd be interested in work. I sent her some of my poems and asked if she'd be interested in working with me, and she was super generous, and I was able to get a grant to work together and to actually even go out to New York and meet her. So she was like, she was definitely like a sister in the project, like a big sister, with so many of the poems that I first started writing. And then around, maybe it was in 2009, she invited me to be a part of the Flarf Collective, and like Casey sent me an email, and she was like, I hope that's okay. I was like, are you kidding? Because so many of the poets I admire were on that listserv, but I kind of like talk about, like, I think Edwin Torres and I were invited to be a part of it at the same time, so we were kind of the whoops generation. of Flarf before people stop being added, and then it disintegrated, or just kind of crumbled a little bit, let's say.
Well, I think that Flarf is a kind of like one of the avant-garde, contemporary avant-garde movements that have sort of happened or emerged. And I when I read the book, or just reading your work, I definitely see some similarities in the aesthetic. Mm-hmm. But I also, I guess, so I was curious about how, so you sort of were drawn to their aesthetic. You went to them. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I call I don't know, in Lakota culture, there's a word for the Heyoka, those who move backwards, those who move counterclockwise in the circle to maintain balance. And I kind of think about Flarf, I like their trickster aesthetic or whatever, and the just sheer anarchy. Mm-hmm. And the pleasure you can laugh and take pleasure in the bad. I'm really interested in Flarf's relationship with failure. But I think my stuff, it's not exactly it's definitely been influenced, but in some ways I think it's I'm the school of having your cake and eating it too, where because there is with a lot of the poems, I mean, I spent a lot of they're not instant, it's not instacraft, that there was a lot of time spent on the poems themselves, and in a lot of cases there is a serious underlying message, so which I think Flarf would be whatever too,
Yeah. Well, that's I thought maybe as I was reading this, and it totally correct me if I'm there was rejection of private, right? That kind of sentimentalized private language for and in that way, it kind of is experimental, and it's kind of avant-garde because it doesn't have the kind of traditional narrative structures, the kind of sentimentalizing that sometimes, I guess you could say, more mainstream poetry. I mean, these are gross generalizations.
Right.
Have contained with them, and I was wondering if that's another reason that your work kind of situated itself the way that it did with this group of poets. But I don't know. I thought that was interesting, and as a woman, I feel like there are a lot, but it's the book feels like an overt rejection of that in some ways. It really is trying not to be. It doesn't feel sentimental to me at all. I don't know what you thought.
Yeah.
It and then I don't know. It also reminded me a little bit of Ashbury in some ways. Do you have any other influences that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, well, definitely Ashbury's syntax. I really love the idea or thinking about mutability of syntax and how in a sentence alone there's opportunity for transformation or mutation. I think, sorry, I'm thinking so many things. I don't know what to talk about.
I hope I haven't thrown too much at you.
No, it's definitely I think it is a weird thing with the poems because there is a lot of times this mock voice of authority that it seemed interesting to me. So what happens when that mock voice of authority is in a woman's hands, and this I mean, part of it is also just culturally, like, kind of being baffled by revisionist histories and, you know, doing a little bit of rewriting, like that I'm serving or I'm a slave to language versus versus some kind of portrayal, sentimental portrayal of experience.
Yes, that's how I found. I'm just interested in sort of this avant-garde poetry, and that's what I found in your work, is that whether it's overt, conscious or not, it seems to sort of align itself aesthetically with other people who have kind of rejected that kind of
Yeah, but I also like to, and Carrie Lorg and I have had this conversation a lot about like where the life of the imagination fits into the everyday, like when we do write about the everyday, like, and for me, like, so many of these poems are like about surviving kind of a really horrible or just grim and uninspiring office job, you know, and like just writing them to stay sane, that they are kind of excursions or encounters, that they are very much personal in that respect. So
yeah. Well, yeah, because you have poems about commuting, dangers in the workplace. It certainly feels personal. It feels very imaginative, and it also, you know, your book reminded me a little bit of Patricia Lockwood just sent me her last book.
Oh.
And there's a little bit of that too. It's because it's so imaginative, and the language just takes you in so many places in the poem. So I was reminded of her poems too, which is, I don't know if you've read her work at all, but
no, but she's like right on my list because there's been conversation about her recently. I was like, I need to read Patricia Lockwood, so I'm looking forward to reading her this summer.
I also found a lot of political. The book feels very political to me. This thing that when you read, I really liked this in the landscape with porn stars. I saw you in the food court, microelectronically controlled. It's so awfully disturbing, but it's also so relevant to all of this surveillance, and it's a food court is in the mall, right, or some kind of
that's how I was imagining it. Yeah,
this hyper sort of capitalist space. So it's these layers of surveillance and control. And how it ends. I love this poem, just Chick-fil-A, because it's twice, you know, repeated. It's kind of like, again, this weird inability to escape and feeling really confined. So politically, I found, and then the poem, the Canadian tuxedo poem that has a reference to the Walter Benjamin, or In the Age of Mechanical Reproduction. Obviously, that's a reference to him. And there just seemed to be a lot of political kinds of thinking about the political. So I wondered if you had any thoughts about that, or how you saw the political, greater, sort of larger political problems, how they fit into your poems and in your writing.
Yeah, definitely. I think, and here's like kind of a flyer for no to write a political poem. So in that ways, they're not. They are very much interacting with the political in this space reconstruction of stories, with kind of using all using our cultural detritus or whatever, but I think like the Hello Kitty one, I was like,
yeah,
the oil spill, there's sometimes direct interactions with it and sometimes more oblique, but and I'm thinking about like one of the things that's been said about it is like there's a deep sense of play for the sake of play, which I think we've kind of lost a sense of play in our culture, so that's true, but it also felt like kind of like a dismissiveness, like, or not wanting to engage with what's actually happening in the poems. And in some ways, I don't see them as any more absurd than the stories that we're fed every day, like in our culture.
Right. I didn't think that they were absurdist at all. That's not the feeling that I got.
Yeah.
I don't know why. That word just never crossed my mind when I read through the entire book.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad.
But play for the sake of play, I didn't get that feeling either, because that is a way to dismiss the poems, because then they're just, that kind of criticism is saying, well, then there's no depth. Isn't that another way of saying, well, then they're not deep? Something like that.
Yeah, right.
So I didn't get that at all. I do think, though, that the idea that they're not political rants or anything like that, but they use the kind of language and the kind of concerns of the political world very much throughout the book.
Definitely, yeah.
But there's joy, too. So it's not all, it's not, do you feel like is it like giving up a little bit or no? Like, well, this is so bad. Our world is just so bad at this point that what can we do besides make these constructions of...
Yeah. I know. What else do we do?
Have plastic, heaps of plastic shit or something like that. I think Dan Knox said that. Plastic garbage.
Well, I think, like, I really believe in, like, thinking about, like, just inhabiting the space of poetry. And so, because poetry is so off the radar of capitalism, there's just, like, it's not a value. So, that doing that or taking time, like, while you're on the clock, writing poems on the clock, that in itself is also an act of resistance. Yeah. It's funny because I wrote all those poems before having my daughter. I did write a lot of them in the last section. I was like 8 months pregnant, and Sharon Mesmer and David had lent me their cabin for 2 weeks, so I was kind of alone in the woods, and
lucky you.
And just being
just you and the unborn baby.
Yep. And the baby bears in the forest. It was so amazing. Like, I still have, like, talk about being sentimental. I was like such sentimental attachments to that little retreat, but yeah, it's interesting. Like, I think maybe there's a little bit more of a nihilistic spirit in this book than say, like, the stuff that I'm writing now. Becoming a mother has kind of changed that for me. Which, by the way, I would really love to ask you about being a mother.
Sure, yeah.
And how that factors into your work. And I'm just looking at the time. So do you mind if we switch to questions about the sonnets?
Not at all. I love talking about myself.
Okay, great. I wanted to read to you. This is from Chris Krause's I Love Dick. But there were two passages in here. I was recalling one and thinking about your book. And she says, this isn't her essay about Hannah Wilke, or Wilkie, I think it's Wilk. She says, because I'm moved in writing to be irrepressible, writing to you seems like some holy cause, because there's not enough female irrepressibility written down. I've fused my silence and repression with the entire female gender's silence and repression. I think the sheer fact of women talking, being paradoxical, inexplicable, flip, self-destructive, but above all else public, is the most revolutionary thing in the world. And I thought of you in the sonnets with that, because there is so much of the quote unquote personal in your work, but this like being public as an act. But she later quotes Hannah Wilk, who wrote that, and this made me think so much of the sonnets too. Hannah Wilk writes, rearranging the touch of sensuality with the residual magic made from laundry lint or latex loosely laid out like love vulnerably exposed. I thought like that could be a blurb for the sonnets in some way. Continually exposing myself to whatever situation occurs, gambling as well as gamboling, like Gamboling, to exist instead of being an existentialist, to make objects instead of being one. And the objectness of the sonnets, I think, is really interesting, because being familiar with your work and your kind of longer forms where you use, where repetition becomes kind of this engine for transformation, I'm interested just to hear about your attraction to the sonnet as a form, and why you decided to inhabit that form for a book-length project.
It's awesome that you got all those amazing quotes, and just thinking about that. The reason I decided to write sonnets, it was a weird bunch of things that happened all at once. The first thing was that I was teaching Shakespeare with some colleagues, a team taught class, and I had never taught Shakespeare, and I hadn't read all of his sonnets. At the same time, it was coming upon this write a poem a day for a month, the National Poetry thing, which this was in 2011, so I had never heard of it, and I thought, what a great way to actually write something every day, because I'm so overworked. The sonnet is a small form. It's short, I can do this every single day. And of course, after the first day or two, I was like, this is not easy. This is really hard. It was frustrating. I was upset with myself. Like, how can I not understand this form? So I read a lot of sonnets at the same time as I was writing them. I read all of the great sonnets, and then I read Bernadette Mears. My friend Jordan sent me Bernadette Mears' book, which I saw in Nada Gordon's apartment, I think that winter or something, that I'd read through it, but just one time. And I read, of course, I knew Ted Berrigan's sonnet. So I thought it felt to me a masculine form, in the sense that, the great sonneteers or something were men. And I thought it would be an interesting introduction, even though, of course, there have been many women who have written brilliant sonnets, to do this, and to write about things that are mundane, like doing the laundry or whatever. I think that the thing with the dental office, as I'm thinking about it, I think that's kind of symbolic, is that I was just this girl file clerk, nothing. But of course these huge men, Tom Petty, this, let God to me is coming in, and like it's an interesting power. I think that's probably why these figures ultimately ended up, they're all men, ended up in my sonnets, because to not become become some kind of voice or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, I'm just sort of thinking about it, but much like your poems, what I do enjoy about the sonnet is that there's a lot of joy in the sonnet.
Mm-hmm.
They're fun, they're play, you know, they're games in some ways. They're all usually about love. So it's, in some sense, an interesting exercise that you just do over and over again. My poems tend to be a little bit on the wilder side, and they veer off into a lot of directions. So it was a good way to sort of formally constrain myself.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And maybe the constraint too. I think like so. The tarot card I drew for us, the magical horse of paradox. But I'm interested in how you dwell on the paradox, because you're also, I think, like with some of the poems, they're in your play, you're subverting or transgressing the form while dwelling within it. You know, like in one of the poems, there are hearts that appear. And I think too. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I think that the sonnet it is extremely paradoxical, because in order to write sonnets that work, they always have to break with the form in some way. So there is no real traditional sonnet. I mean, within the traditional sonnet is the breaking of the sonnet. And I mean, have you read Bernadette Mayer's sonnet?
You know, I haven't, but I did read Ted Barron's. Yeah.
And I think Tender Buttons is reissuing it for the fall. But I'll send you a PDF of it, and you can see she was a big influence on my sonnets, because she's kind of the first person that I read whose sonnets were both very personal and also engaging in this traditional form.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't consider her a formalist at all, nor do I consider myself a formalist at all. So.
I love hearing about like Bernadette Mayer, because she's so. I felt like just in terms of influences, like I felt like the presence of Bernadette Mayer and kind of the presence of Sylvia Plath too. And Walter Benjamin, which I still don't understand why I felt him. But there's something very beautiful. Like you have such beautiful Baroque moments of language, and I think which made me think of Benjamin. But
I just read his Moscow Diary. Have you read that?
No.
It's amazing. It's all online. You can Google it and get a PDF, and it's fantastic. He seems like a complete like a nut, but it's wonderful. He's got these great moments in there. Yeah, I mean, he's actually a big influence on me. I don't consider myself an intellectual necessarily, but as a thinker, just thinking about the world.
I just read One Way Street, and in which he confronts a lot of dark issues, but there's something about there's a warmth to his writing that I feel in yours too. Even like in this, I think what's so great about your language and the poems is that like even when the territory is the object, like there's a warmth and like you like to use that word play again. There's in it that is so like that. It feels like it makes everything okay. You know, that it's like. It's okay. Like, I think for so many women, we read Mother Was a Tragic Girl, my students in my intermediate poetry class. And I think so many of them I feel like you give women writers so much permission in terms of what happens in your poems or what's okay for discussion.
That's thank you. That's very flattering. I think connection is important to me. I think it's one of the great tragedies of poetry. It's like we don't have the audiences that we should, because I really feel like we're saying these important things, and we should have people listen to us. And I feel like connections are important, and I just I don't know. Poetry's such a weird thing. On the one hand, like you were saying before, how nice it is that it's not really like an area where capitalism is, super interested or something like that.
Yeah.
And so we have kind of freedom, I guess. And
yeah. I think maybe, more institutionalized versions of it is. Like...
yeah. If we're lucky, right?
Right.
Not lucky. But yeah, on the other hand, we in some sense we lack an audience. But I still think connections. I like stories. Like I use narrative. I think narrative is important for me because I like to tell stories in a way. But women, obviously, and for your work too, it's so obvious in here. The kind of discussions of femininity, being a woman. I love that. What was it? There's something in here. Like the pink something, you know it. It's
the pink
great.
tufa dust.
Yeah.
The Golden Girls.
The Golden Girls. There are so many instances of that. There's the Hello Kitty. I thought it was funny that you have Hello Kitty in your book, and I have Hello Kitty. Hello Kitty just as this weird.
Yeah, in our Venn diagram, like we overlap with Hello Kitty and Beowulf.
And food court. I have a food court every Sunday.
Right.
But yeah, it's in Malibu. So, yeah. They're just giving women, being in a history or a line of women writers, experimental, I think is something that is very special. And I'm proud of it. I love it.
Yeah, it's absolutely thrilling to be like a part of Bloof, because I've adored Bloof books for so long, and I think what Shanna's doing with Bloof is so important, and it's a component of it is a feminist project, that it is putting these alternative or unexpected women's voices into poetry.
Yeah, and it's I know it's awesome that she picked up your book. I think that's great. She's amazing, and I think for a number of reasons, but that she doesn't call it a feminist press.
Right.
But if you look at most of the books, they are all dealing with or talking about many of these feminist issues. And it's just like Danielle and Jen, I just feel like it's just this perfect press for this kind of work. Mm-hmm. I think other people would be too afraid to publish, frankly. I mean, I sent out my first book, Warsaw Bikini, to like over and over and over and over again, and no one would publish it. And she saw it and she's like, I'm going to publish this. And it was this amazing thing. It was awesome.
Yeah, definitely. And also, another thing with Bloof is, just too in this, like, it provides a home for humor too. I'm really interested in the role of humor in your work. And it's kind of like the way people might dismiss play for the sake of play. They also dismiss humor as not being, if something's funny, then it's not really serious, and you can kind of pigeonhole it as funny or whatever. But I think like your work disproves that. Like Jen Knox's work disproves that too. That it's a really it's a complicated gesture and very powerful in poetry.
Yeah. Well, and also I think if you're a woman and you're, you use humor in any way, then you're automatically just, that's just such an easy way for people not to take your work seriously.
Mm-hmm.
It's not serious, right? And there's something about women doing that is it's particularly easy to dismiss. Maybe because people want to dismiss women in any ways or something, and then if you're funny, I don't consider myself like that funny, but
Yeah.
it's like Jen's work. I know that Jen has had some of these, these issues certainly come up. I also think of like Summer Browning, who's very funny.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, people love their poems, and they're really great poets. But I've heard this discussion surrounding their work and the use of humor. And your book is very funny as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the kind of, I saw some of the, again, like some of the humor that you use is similar to some of the people in the Flarf Collective, kind of little juxtapositions of different things that you wouldn't expect
mm-hmm.
together.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. You do that really, really well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
This is great moment. Wait. I just kept underlining the things that, like, I love this. To have spent the weekend trying to save your own life sucks. And it's true, and it's so funny. The laundry machine sucks. I just love that because it was so, I could relate to it. It's great. Here's a moment.
If I can just like point to a moment of humor, like your poem Great Smoky Mountain National Park, when it begins, my husband calls me a mountain snob. Well, stop leaving empty containers of food in the cupboards, I respond. It's true. Like, and there's juxtaposition at work there too, but that poem just cracks me up. I thought it was, I mean, it's sad. Kind of a gallows humor. Sorry, I'm getting an echo.
No, it's fine. I think that, some of, if we're talking about motherhood or having a baby, that was one of the poems I was thinking of. I must have written very soon after I had my son. Mm-hmm. And just that point where you have a baby and you're like, great, I had a baby and now I'm just fat. I don't have a baby in me. I'm not just pregnant. I felt fat and just like my body was just something that I had never seen before. And I hadn't left the house in 6 weeks. And I thought, okay, we need to go we need to go to a cabin. Let's go to a cabin and it'll make everything better. And just feeling that postpartum depression, feeling like everything's changed, my body's changed. I have a kid, and life is definitely different now.
Yeah.
Which everyone tells you, as you know, before you have a baby, oh, your life is going to be so different. And you have no idea what you can understand that abstractly, but you certainly haven't. I mean, at least I can speak for myself. I had no idea what that was going to actually mean.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Sorry, I keep on hearing this echo, and I think it's like you about to start talking, so I'm stopping myself. But the poem ends, some tweens float by on tires as if rivers, and kids are just reels of film. One of them screams, help me. I say I'm too fat to move. The cellulite on my ass won't erode. Call me crazy, but isn't there a 6-week-old infant in my lap? Holy shit, he just rolled his eyes at me. That moment, I think it's such a complicated, I think it's so hard to talk about, especially that moment that you're describing, postpartum, the postpartum freshness of being a mother.
Yeah, I think it was, it's funny, that actually happened, and when you read that section to me, it immediately reminds me of seeing those kids sitting by a river, seeing kids in tires or inner tubes go by, and one of them did scream, "Help me!" And it's like I would have never remembered that if I hadn't like sort of a document of little moments of how life is weird and strange, and how those kids were older than my baby, and they're moving past, and that's it. And then I think that it's all with the form, because the sonnet is always about time, movement, time, things happening, trying to get something down quickly because life is short and things do not last forever. So.
Yeah. Speaking of time, another thing that occurred to me when reading the sonnets is your sonnets. Is something I had read that Lisa Robertson wrote in Milling about. She proposed this idea of thinking about the domestic or the domus as a mediating skin, and something like complicating the idea of the binary, like inside versus outside or private versus public, that it's actually a much more complicated and porous territory. And I love something that happens with a lot of your sonnets is it's almost like a vertigo of deep time, where you go from these the mundane or the banal to like geologic or astral, and there's this blending or melding of the two, and the way that complicates time too is really, I think, really interesting in your work.
Deep geologic time space. I actually felt that I felt that your poems were similar, just in the sense of they got so much into every poem. There was nothing that was off limits. That you could really, in one of Elisabeth's poems, anything could emerge or happen or appear. And so, in a way, I think my poems are more traditionally, with time, they work very traditionally. They sort of understand time as linear and moving in one direction, but I feel like yours are not like that. That they are more, they're cooler because they're arranged in a kind of spatial way that mine aren't. They don't seem hierarchical. As hierarchical as my poems. I thought that was really interesting. I always love that. Does that make any sense? Like, they seem more like pulling things together in space. I don't know.
No, it does make sense.
You do use repetition a lot, I feel like.
Yeah.
In order to get some form, and I think maybe that's a way for you to create a kind of formal element, because you don't use a lot of formal. You don't have patterns or something that you use, do you? Do you have a secret codes or anything like that? What do you do?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like every time I sit down to write a poem, I need to remember what a poem is, and and something with repetition too. It's like I'm so resistant, and this might just be because I'm a Sagittarius, but so resistant to fixity or singularity that through repetition there are other possibilities, and there's more. Like thinking about poetry as of possibility versus finality or even certainty.
Yeah, and so that would be like sonnets in themselves, in their form, have a lot of finality, moving from one place to another in a linear way. It's just built into the form. There's no way around it, or it's not fully it. So I think that's you're forced in a sense to use these other tools.
Yeah. Well, and I think, like, sorry, I'm still thinking about what you were saying about the function of narrative in your work, and I guess what I meant with the time aspect or geologic time is like what gets pulled into your narrative stream, like, is very, like, your narrative stream is incredibly capacious, and monstrous. Like, I'm thinking of, like, the ghosts at noon, you know, at the end of that poem. I love you so much. Where binaries do make an appearance. But the poem you write, and after everything I've done, the binary systems mix that I've put you through unjust their molten cores, happy to relax in Z's room and read him Dr. Seuss. So, like, having this very intimate moment with your son, and then the poem mutates into continents shift because we forgot to turn off the hose. We overwatered them. I feel so dumb so often. Stupid sun, stupid holes. Little beans grow down to hell. There's no beyond. And then the dripping hearts. The earth core is a blow. The earth's core is a blow. So, and I think that's just kind of an example of a moment where, like, the vertigo of that intimate moment to the continents shifting because we overwatered them. There's something, there's an interesting presence of, like, kind of a new mythos there happening too. I don't know.
I feel like I learned, like, when I was really young, this is a really weird influence for me, but I learned, I read a bunch of Jory Graham for whatever reason, and like, I always remember this one poem. I actually don't remember what it's called, but it's like she's like taking her kid to ballet or gymnastics or something, and there's a leotard, and then, like, the poem ends up in this, like, completely different place, and it's like this becomes this big, huge thing, and I always, like, thought that was really cool. Like, how do you have, like, something so simple and something so mundane in a poem, and then end up with, like, the cosmos? Obviously, that's this difficult thing to pull off in a poem, and I'm not saying that I do it or anything like that, but that's always been one of the things that I've been interested in, is to have these, like, material, little tiny things, because we are these humans that are nothing, and then to try to sort of imagine this huge space that we're living in. And I'm an atheist, so I don't really believe in, you know, an afterlife or anything like that. So it's scary and mysterious, I think.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I try to think about that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love the presence of that, and, like, thinking about that as a vulnerability, and then in more banal terms, like, the vulnerability of exposing those private moments too.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like we're living in this weird era where privacy obviously is eroded so much, and so I kind of think of, like, intimacy a lot, and how to maintain intimacy and how to create intimacy in poetry, because poetry can do that so well.
Yes.
How to have these moments that allow a reader to feel that exists still, because it's very easy. I mean, we can go so long through the day without even feeling that that's even a possibility anymore. Mm-hmm. So I think that's one of the things that I think poetry makes very beautiful, and other art forms as well, to movies. And I felt in your book, so I felt there's a lot of intimacy throughout your whole book, even though it's not, you know, sentimental. There's these moments of, there's this one that I love. Hold on. There's funny stuff, like, I love, like, the corn dog. You have this great vocabulary of high and low that I love. I guess speaking of intimacy and estrangement from people, I think this landscape with David and Dave is very speaks to that a little bit. What is that? Can you talk about that poem? I thought it was so odd, but so interesting.
Yeah, I think that, well, the Lady Gaga's prehensile peen had like come up as a topic of conversation on the Flarf list. I think Jordan Davis had brought it up or something. So, and I don't know what I was doing, but there was something. It was like some kid's book online or something, like Adventures of David and Dave, like. And I'd had this landscape series going, but I just, like, speaking of high and low, like the formal and the informal together.
David and Dave.
Yeah.
But also, it's like these twins. They're twins. It's a twin world. It's, you know. But the surface, right?
Right.
Not what's underneath. There are two things. Like Lady Gaga's. I mean, it's funny, but it's also. I like your mole.
Well, it's like kind of like the twin worlds too, of like the weirdness, or maybe just the paradox of being a woman writing poems is like dwelling in the world of poet, like dwelling in the poem. In some ways, I feel like
that there's another. I feel like in your poems that we need to read them a few times. That there's a deeper meaning that you're trying to like. I mean, this is Ashbery. It feels very Ashbery to me. Like I feel like that's a title that Ashbery would have come up with or something. And then, I guess the other thing I forgot to mention when we were talking about the political stuff in your poetry, this coup d'etat and discotheque, I thought that was very interesting and funny, but also that sense that there's the political and a discotheque, like that they're put together. And I've heard all these like revolutionary sort of poets or whatever doing dance parties and things like that. So it made me think about these kinds of where does like the political and like joy fit in, and how do they fit together? And so, did you want to talk about that poem for a moment? Or?
Sure. Well, I guess going back to the twin worlds, like this like double dwelling. Like I was first a dancer, so I love the idea of having dance parties, and that merger of the ecstatic with like, or the ecstatic being a mode of resistance. But yeah, I guess then on the like another side of the poem too is commenting on like the tendency of capitalism to consume the subversive into it, like Virgin Airlines creating a Mile High Club, you know, like offering beds, but just I don't know. I feel like just like there needs to be this constant need to keep on moving in order not to be like swallowed up by that movement of capitalism.
You need to step ahead in some sense.
Yeah. Or just and also so you can't be pinned down or pigeonholed. There's just but that's not really talking about I'm sorry.
I like the end with the Lacey, because then quarantine my Lacey riot. I love that because it's feminine, right?
Mm-hmm.
This idea of a riot and then quarantine, which sort of goes back to the issues that we were talking about before, the sense of being confined, quarantined, not being, to be monitored.
Mm-hmm.
If coup d'etat, then discotheque. I love that.
Yeah, it was responding to so I was working in this art museum at the time, and there was this big to-do over this Rosalind painting, the Comtesse d'Egmont Pignatelli, I think was her name. But the kind of absurdity of the portrait, like she is just like in this huge like lacy dress, like, and like the dress, there's more dress than human in it, like she just had a tiny head and then a tiny dog by her side. But yeah, I had that, I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about Studio 54 when I put that together. So that's the weird, like, I think a lot of the poems are generated out of maybe this creation of unsuccessful binaries, like things that aren't exactly opposites, but there's energy or tension between them. So I'm interested in, like, in juxtaposition as a driving force. And
I felt that very much, is that it's not higher. Again, I got some feeling that spatially laid out in a kind of spatial way. Maybe the dancing too has something to do with that. It felt non-hierarchical, but also that there's still kind of dialectic, like a comparison of things in the poem. That they're still being put together for a reason, to create kinds of meanings. And I thought that was really interesting. Yeah, I love this poem. I thought it was wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
Perhaps the best titles ever. Landscape with Porn Stars. I love it. What do you think?
I think we've talked for a lot. I think we have a lot of material to work with.
I think so too, and I think it went really well.
I think so too. Thank you so much, Sandra. I have so many. I feel like I could keep on talking to you with questions.
Me too. Congratulations on your book. It's wonderful.
Thank you so much, and congratulations on the sonnets. I'm so excited for it to come out, and I feel so honored I got this sneak peek of it.
I feel honored that I got to interview you. So yay.